This is my Pinewood Derby car. This is my Pinewood Derby car in a wood chipper. And this is what happened when I tried to put it back together. I made a Pinewood Derby car for a race where the loser gets hurled into a wood chipper. And we all like an underdog story. Seeing the little guy overcome the odds despite his shortcomings and claim victory when it seems impossible. And my car was the underdog. Made on the bare floor of my garage before I had built my workshop. It had no business winning. And it didn't. Not even once. Instead, it lost and was hurled into the abyss of the shredder and crushed in the metal teeth of that machine. A cup of the broken pieces, the only trophy for my work. And in that moment, I vowed to come back the next year, to make a new car from the shattered remains, giving it a chance to drive once more. At first, I tried to just put the car back together like a puzzle. After all, I was pretty sure that I had most of it, and after a couple hours, I realized it was impossible, so I drew up a new plan. The idea was to cast the new car out of resin with pieces of the old one suspended inside it, preserved in a thick shell. The design couldn't be too complicated. The event was only about a month away, so I didn't have time to focus on intricate details. I chose an aerodynamic shape that I knew had worked for others in the past, a technique that had been passed down through generations of Cub Scouts. It was a wedge. I decided to make a wedge. I started with a typical Pinewood Derby blank. I think in Cub Scouts they just give it to you for free, but apparently I'm too old to be in Cub Scouts anymore, so I had to pay for mine. And the first step was to cut out the wedge shape. Now, while I do have a lot more tools than I did last year, I didn't have anything designed to do this sort of cut. And I mean, yeah, I had a couple kinds of hand saws and even a jigsaw, but even though this design looks simple, it requires cutting a relatively thick piece of wood very precisely. The smart decision was to buy a saw that was suited for the task, but I'm not smart, so I decided to misuse the biggest saw that I have and pray that it would be fine. I was worried that the wood was too thick, that the little blade wouldn't be able to cut through. And I was right. Mostly. It wasn't impossible, but cutting through that little piece of pine was a battle. The narrow blade flexed far more than it should have, threatening to snap in half, and the wood tried its best to vibrate out of control, pushing against the foot that was meant to keep it in place. But after a couple of minutes of fighting the saw, I emerged victorious and had 2 pieces of wood when before there had been 1. The result was rough. Very rough. It was not the clean cut that I had hoped for, but it was also not beyond my skill to fix. So I put the block in my vise and started to smooth it out with an orbital sander. Once again, I don't think this is really how this tool is meant to be used, but I still have all of my fingers from the last time I misused a tool, so it's probably fine. I really hope I'm not a role model for anyone. In fact, anytime I think I'm being a bad role model, I'm gonna just put a little note on screen. Anyways, the sander seemed to work. The randomly moving sandpaper turning uneven cuts into a single plane, hiding my mistakes. And once the edge was flat, I switched to sanding by hand, starting with 80 grit and then moving my way all the way up to 1500. I needed it as smooth as possible for what would come next. I love doing work like this. I get a strange sense of pride from the fact that I sanded it so well that it was practically reflective. There was a bittersweetness to it though. After all, I was making this thing, knowing that it would most likely meet a violent end. The thought gave me some apprehension, so I took a quick break to clear my head. Anyways, back to the task at hand.
Not taking the hobbits to Isengard!
Anyways, back to the...
I am no man.
Back to the task at hand. I sprayed it with an acrylic coat to seal the wood and hide what little imperfections remained. The smell reminds me of the days when I would paint models, mostly 40K and Star Wars. Other than Legos, I think building and painting models was my first maker hobby. Back then, I didn't wear a respirator, but I do now. I think the paint fumes made me smarter. After applying several layers to every inch of the car, I cleaned up my workstation and got out some clay. I began to form a base around my woodwork. At this point, I was working outside of my experience. I've never used this method or this kind of clay before. Not only is it sulfur-free, it's gluten-free, which I assume means it's edible. They say that a single bite can fill the belly of a man. So I ate 4, and I strongly advise against anyone trying the same. After that snack, I finished making the form and started to even it out. I had to be careful not to scratch the car. The smallest scrapes could cause problems later in the process, so I mostly used my hands for this part. Once I was happy with it, I got out my poster board and cut it into 5 pieces, blissfully unaware of the fact that I was using the wrong version of the material, but I wouldn't realize my mistake until much later. I put the clay form on top of the largest piece and used a clay cutting tool. I don't know what it's called. It's basically just a really flat piece of metal. Well, whatever it is, I used it to cut the clay. And then I used a wood scraping tool to clean up the edges around the car, and isopropyl alcohol to smooth out any remaining roughness in the texture. At first, I tried using whatever this rubber sculpting tool is to help smooth it out, but I quickly realized that my hands worked better. I started hot gluing the rest of the poster board in place, being careful not to leave any gaps. This was the one part of the process that I had experience with. I'm pretty good with hot glue. And once all the sides were glued in place, I used this thing. Okay, I really need to learn the names of the tools I'm using. Hang on. I used the ball stylus tool to make a bunch of registration points. I learned what registration points are and why I should use them from watching Bobby Fingers. If you haven't seen his channel before, you should check it out. It's unique, and it's been a huge inspiration for mine. Anyways, I got out a scrap piece of clay and made whatever this thing is. I don't even think it has a name, it's just kind of a blob. And after I finished making the nameless blob, I got out some 2-part silicone. It's the stuff that they use to make cookie forms and dildos out of. Hopefully not at the same time. I've never worked with it before, but I've heard that you should always wear gloves when using a material like this. At first, I tried to measure it by weight, but something is wrong with my scale. The last digit on the display is a script I can't read, and without the manual, there are few who can. So I put the Eldritch scale aside and started to just measure by volume. Once it was mixed, I poured it into the form I'd made, and everything was going well until I realized that I'm not nearly as good at using hot glue as I thought. There were leaks in multiple spots, and I spent the next several minutes desperately fighting to reinforce the breaches. Eventually, I decided that it was probably fine and just hoped that enough would stay in the form. The box says that it cures in 7 hours, but I gave it a full day to be sure. Luckily, my resealing efforts paid off and not too much dripped out. So I carefully began to remove the silicone, and it was around this point that I realized my mistake with the poster board. I should have gotten the plasticky one with the smooth surface. Instead, I had bought the rough papery one because it was cheaper. It made it far more difficult than it needed to be to pull the form apart. But after a couple of minutes, the first half of the mold was free. I set aside the clay. It could be reused for future projects and snacks. For the second half, I'd cut out more of the wrong poster board. I'd already bought it and didn't have the budget for more. If you'd like to help me afford to be able to buy better materials, check out my Patreon. You can get your name in a video like these beautiful people, plus I post monthly videos there. This month's video is about how I make my videos, or it might be about finally painting my pile of shame. I don't know. I haven't filmed it yet. There's a solid chance I'll panic, drink a whiskey, and stumble my way through another vlog. Shameless self-promotion aside, I built a new form to make the other half of the mold, putting extra attention into sealing it with the hot glue. While the first half had worked, it had made a mess, and I'd rather not make that mistake again. Unlike the previous time, I also put a ring of hot glue around the edge of the mold. Leaking out of the sides could cause bigger problems than just a mess. You see, silicone likes to stick to itself, so if it leaked into the wrong places on the other mold, it could end up fusing together into a single piece. To keep this from happening on the places where I needed the 2 layers of silicone to touch, I sprayed it with mold release, forming a protective coat. And then I mixed another batch of silicone and poured it into the mold. I made too much, so I poured it into a glass and did my best to resist the urge to drink it. Side note, if anyone knows how to get the silicone out of the glass without messing up either, please tell me. It's stuck and I want to get it out without damaging it. Kind of like that Reddit post about a guy with a mystery cylinder stuck in an M&M's tube. Anyways, an even bigger problem I have is that I got so distracted while getting cinematic shots of the cup that I kind of forgot to get any shots of me removing the mold. You didn't miss much, honestly. I'd learned from my previous mistake, there wasn't any leakage, and the 2 parts separated easily. It was really floppy though, and I was worried about it losing shape, so I cut out a piece of scrap MDF board to make a brace for it, making sure to cut a hole to pour through. And it was finally time for the resin. Now, one does not simply pour resin into a mold. It gets hot as it cures, and this can cause tiny bubbles to appear all over the final product. The solution to this is to remove all the bubbles with a vacuum chamber. This is called degassing, and I would like credit for being an adult here and not making a fart joke. This vacuum chamber here is the reason that I didn't have the budget for good poster board. Anyways, like the silicone, the resin is a two-part deal. Mix equal parts A and B and put it in the vacuum chamber. While I waited for the resin to finish farting, I assembled the mold. I placed a few choice pieces of my destroyed car inside and closed it up, securing it with zip ties. Then I took the resin out, poured it inside, and waited. A day later, I opened up the mold and carefully removed my creation, excited to see the final result. And it was an attempt. A couple of things had gone wrong. First, I don't think I left the resin in the vacuum chamber long enough. There were hundreds of tiny bubbles. Even worse, there were massive ones as well. Huge spots where the air had become trapped inside the mold, resulting in large voids. I needed a way for the air to escape. I noticed that the bubbles appeared mostly towards the corners of the car, so I marked each of those and used my drill press to make vents in the mold. After cleaning it up, I repeated the entire pouring process, making sure to give the resin extra time in the vacuum chamber. I also wanted to see what would happen if I didn't use the zip ties to hold everything in place. When I opened it up, I was happy to see a huge improvement. There were still a few bubbles, but far less than my first attempt. Apparently the zip ties were also important because there was a lot of flash where the seam of the two molds was. And I was starting to get worried. I didn't have much time left. I honestly don't know where it all went. But despite the looming deadline, I had an idea I wanted to try for the final pour. The area around the axles seemed to be what was causing the majority of the bubbles, so what if I just didn't put resin there? I took out the original blank I had made out of wood and used my scroll saw to cut it at an angle. It didn't need to be angled like that, but I thought it looked cooler this way. Then I used my sander to smooth it out. And finally, I carefully drilled out a few holes to give the resin a spot to really grip into. I don't think I actually needed to do that last step, but I would only get one shot at this, so I couldn't take any chances. I took the two pieces and fit them into the mold and then filled the empty center section with pieces of my old car, hoping to give it one last chance to drive once more. Then I used all the lessons I had learned from the previous two attempts and poured the resin. While it cured, I went back to the second car. I didn't plan to enter it in the race, but I could still use it for practice. I used wire cutters to cut off the bits left by the vent holes and a hacksaw to cut off the nameless blob from the pour hole. Then, I used a hobby knife and a Dremel to clean up the rough spots. If you ever do something like this, please wear a mask. This dust does not belong in your lungs. The cleanup process had left the resin all hazy, so I got out a can of gloss acrylic spray and used it to give it a nice clear finish. By the time I was done with it, the resin in the other car had fully cured, so I got to work. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the shredder, axles will be taken. That which thought gone did survive. Rebuilt, the pine will awaken. The car that was broken shall drive. The final product was probably one of the most beautiful things that I've ever made. A precious testament to my skill as a maker and my ability to learn and improvise. And I began to question whether or not I wanted to risk harm coming to it. After all, why shouldn't I keep it?
Precious, my precious, precious, my precious!
That morning, I reluctantly packed my car and drove from Oregon to California. During the drive, I came to terms with the fact that I had built the car to be destroyed, and by not giving it that chance, all my work would be in vain. The truth is that all good things eventually come to an end. After all, I wouldn't have been able to make this car in the first place if my previous one hadn't been shredded. So I made peace with the potential loss of my car. And then something happened that I did not intend. After getting to open source and settling in at the Power Wheels track, check out my other video about that project, I picked up my precious car and began to walk around the convention. I searched all around, and though I found many wonderful things, I couldn't find the Shredder Derby. And at one point I thought I had. A track with gravity-powered cars, just like mine, but it didn't end in a shredder. Instead, it was a hot dog race that ended in a high-voltage barbecue. They even let me compete, but my car didn't win. It didn't even finish. It was the wrong size, and it skidded to a halt in front of the finish line. So I kept searching for the race that I had built my car for. When I make these videos, I always try to have two endings for the story I want to tell. One for if I'm successful, and one for if I'm not. That way, I don't spend weeks working on a video that just never sees the light of YouTube. And I did that with this video. Either my car would return a champion and I'd drink to its victory, or it'd be shredded and I would drink to my destroyed creation. Instead, I learned that there was no Shredder Derby this year. For whatever reason, it was canceled, and I don't know if it'll ever return. So instead of drinking to my car, today I raise my glass to an event I will never forget.